On distant islands at the far eastern edge of Asia, where the vast ocean rises like a wall between man and the continent, a civilization emerged from the mists of myth and the endless breadth of the sea. This was Yamato, the cradle of ancient Japan, where legend and history entwined, where the sun goddess Amaterasu illuminated golden rice fields, and where an imperial dynasty slowly claimed its sacred right to rule. If Babylon boasted its hanging gardens, and Egypt its pyramids, Yamato built a spiritual empire. It was a strange alchemy, the native faith of Shinto fused with the foreign teachings of Buddhism, the cold steel of the warrior's sword set beside the soft brushstrokes of poetry, the cry of battle echoing alongside the resonant bells of temple gongs. Even today, as twilight falls over Kyoto's wooden temples draped in moss, or as the golden rays of sunset pass through the sacred roof beams of Ise Shrine, one feels the breath of Yamato still lingering, a spirit that has never faded. Filmmakers like Akira Kurosawa, with Seven Samurai, or modern epics such as The Last Samurai, are but mirrors reflecting fragments of this ancient depth, where warrior and poet, god and mortal, coexist in an eternal rhythm. But Yamato was not mere legend. It was the tale of a small island people, pressed between two colossal forces, the raging sea on one side and the mighty civilization of China on the other. In this crucible, the Yamato learned to absorb without dissolving, to borrow without being swallowed. They took writing, faith, and technology from the continent, yet forged a spirit uniquely their own, a Japan unmistakable in its essence. Like their counterparts in Age of Empires, where Yamato cavalry march resilient and swift, in real history too, these islanders advanced with endurance and quiet strength. They resisted the Mongol invasions with both a divine wind, kamikaze, and an iron will, then shaped a society where Bushido and Zen meditation became two faces of the same soul. The story of Yamato is therefore more than the history of one nation. It is a human epic of choosing between isolation and integration, between war and poetry, between bloodshed and the light of culture. It is a journey from myth to reality, from scattered tribes to an enduring dynasty. A journey at once tragic and lyrical, one the world still regards with reverence and wonder. At the far eastern edge of Asia, where the land breaks apart into volcanic ridges and the Pacific breathes against jagged shores, the Japanese islands rose as both cradle and fortress. Japan was a world apart, a chain of mountains thrust from the sea, its valleys narrow, its soil demanding labor, yet its coastline abundant with fish and salt. To live here was to wrestle with the sea and the mountains, to draw life from both. This isolation gave the early Japanese a peculiar destiny. They were shielded from the tides of continental conquest, yet always gazing westward toward the glittering power of China and Korea. In such a land, history first clothed itself in myth. For the Japanese, the origins of their civilization were not recorded in the dry chronicles of kings, but sung in the voices of gods. The earliest stories tell of Amaterasu, the sun goddess, whose radiance gave warmth and order to the world. From her divine lineage came Jimmu, the first emperor, who, according to legend, led his people eastward until he conquered Yamato, the fertile plain that would lend its name to the emerging state. Thus, the throne of Japan claimed a sanctity beyond question. To obey the emperor was to obey the gods, and to resist him was to resist the sun itself. Myth was not merely a tale told by firelight. It was a charter of power, a political theology that bound clans beneath a single celestial crown. Yet beneath the poetry of these myths, archaeologists and historians have unearthed a more prosaic truth. The Japanese islands of the early centuries were divided among tribal chieftains, each commanding loyalty through blood ties and ritual. Some clans rose above others, accumulating wealth from agriculture and trade with the continent. Around the fertile region of the Nara Basin, the Yamato clan began to assert its supremacy. Through marriage, war, and the invocation of divine descent, Yamato transformed from a clan into a kingdom and its leader into something greater, the Tenno, or heavenly sovereign. This transformation was no simple conquest. It was an act of imagination as much as force. The Yamato rulers adopted the myths of Amaterasu and Jimmu to sanctify their dominance. They fashioned a narrative in which their victory was preordained by the heavens. By tying the human order to the celestial, they subdued rivals not only with sword, but with story. It was a strategy both subtle and enduring, for even today, more than a millennium later, the Japanese emperor traces his legitimacy back to the sun goddess herself. The dawn of Yamato was thus a dawn of duality, where legend veiled reality, and reality clothed itself in legend. The rice fields of Nara were tilled by peasants who bowed to earthly lords, yet those lords claimed to be the offspring of heaven. A fisherman casting his net into the inland sea might think only of survival. Yet his tribute of salt or fish fed a political center that declared itself divine. History in Japan did not begin by casting away myth, but by weaving myth into the fabric of power. One sees the resonance of this beginning in Japan's art and imagination even today. The opening sequence of the tale of Princess Kaguya, the animated masterpiece by Studio Ghibli, captures this atmosphere with uncanny fidelity. A child born of light and mystery. A people humbled before beauty they cannot fully grasp. The film is not a history lesson, yet in its dreamlike tones, one senses the spirit of Yamato's dawn, a time when the boundary between heaven and earth was porous, when to till the soil was also to appease the gods. This blending of myth and reality was not unique to Japan. All early civilizations did it. The Egyptians made their pharaohs sons of Ra. The Chinese spoke of heaven's mandate. The Romans traced their origins to Mars and Venus. But in Japan, the bond was deeper, more continuous. While Egypt's gods crumbled beneath foreign conquest and Rome's pantheon was silenced by Christianity, the Japanese emperor's divine claim endured, unbroken, for centuries. It gave Japan a center of gravity, a unifying axis around which rival clans and warring provinces could orbit. The Yamato dawn, therefore, was not only the beginning of a dynasty, but the birth of a cultural pattern. An island people forever balancing between the tangible and the transcendental, between the sword and the shrine. Their mountains and seas demanded resilience. Their myths offered unity. From this crucible of geography and imagination emerged the foundation of one of history's most distinctive civilizations. To speak of Yamato is to glimpse that twilight hour when legend becomes law, and when the fate of a people is bound to stories they themselves believe into being. It is the hour when Japan began to call itself Japan. Every civilization builds itself upon its stomach, and Yamato was no exception. If mountains and seas gave Japan its shape, it was rice and fish that gave it life. The early Japanese, pressed between steep ridges and restless waves, learned to coax survival from both soil and ocean, until their economy became a symphony of earth and water, grain and tide. The gift of rice did not come from isolation. It was borrowed, like a seed carried across the sea. From the Korean peninsula and the great river valleys of China, the Yamato learned the arts of wet rice cultivation. In the warm, humid plains, of Kyushu and Nara. Paddies spread like mirrors of the sky, each reflecting the sun that gave them life. Unlike the shifting crops of earlier ages, rice demanded patience, irrigation, cooperation. Whole villages bent their backs in rhythm, planting, tending, and harvesting together. And in this communal labor was born not only food, but society, a people bound by water channels and planting songs, by the shared struggle against flood and drought. If rice anchored Yamato to the earth, the sea offered a second pillar. Japan's coasts teemed with fish: tuna, mackerel, sardine, shellfish. Fishing was not merely an occupation, it was a lifeline. Nets and boats became as vital as plows and hoes. Salt, drawn from the ocean's edge, preserved what could not be eaten fresh. A fisherman's catch might travel inland to the rice farmer, while the farmer's surplus grain returned to the shore. Thus, through exchange, mountain, plain, and sea wove themselves into one economy. But Yamato's wealth was not confined to food. Beneath its soil and in its trade lay other treasures. From the continent came iron tools and weapons, harder and sharper than stone or bronze. The mastery of iron transformed the fields and the battlefield alike. Stronger plows cut deeper furrows, while tougher swords and arrowheads gave warriors a decisive edge. Clay, shaped into pottery, carried grain and water, its forms both practical and artistic. These simple objects, unearthed by archaeologists today, still bear the fingerprints of a people learning to shape the earth to their will. Trade with the mainland was as important as the harvest. Across the narrow straits of Korea, ships carried not only goods, but ideas. Writing, with its Chinese characters, arrived like fire to a darkened room. With it came records, laws, chronicles, the ability to bind memory to ink. Alongside writing came Buddhism, a faith that would remake Japan's spirit as thoroughly as rice had remade its soil. Silk, bronzeware, and new technologies flowed into Yamato, while pearls, timber, and lacquerware made the return journey. Japan was never fully isolated. Even in its earliest centuries, it was already part of a great East Asian conversation. Economy is destiny. And Yamato's destiny was to be an island kingdom, both self-reliant and outward-looking. Its rice paddies taught the value of discipline and collective labor. Its seas taught flexibility and exchange. The balance between them shaped a culture at once rooted and adventurous. To glimpse this legacy in modern Japan is to see continuity across centuries. Walk through Tokyo's Tsukiji market at dawn, and you see the same abundance of the sea that once sustained Yamato fishermen. Tuna lifted like trophies, the air heavy with salt and brine. Sit before a plate of sushi, and you taste not just a delicacy, but an inheritance, the union of rice and fish that fed a civilization. What today is global cuisine began as the humble marriage of paddy and ocean. And yet, the economy of Yamato was not merely about survival. It created symbols, rituals, identities. The planting of rice was celebrated with prayers and offerings to the gods. The sea was not just a larder, but a realm of spirits and dangers, its bounty both blessing and trial. Every grain of rice, every fish caught, carried with it a touch of the divine. In this fusion of economy and religion, Yamato revealed its secret, that to eat was also to worship, and to live was also to honor the unseen. Thus, the economy of Yamato was never merely material. It was spiritual, social, cultural. It forged bonds of cooperation, gave birth to new technologies, and opened doors to foreign influence. It taught the Yamato people the discipline of the field, the daring of the fisherman, the craft of the smith, and the vision of the trader. From such humble foundations rose a civilization that would, in time, astonish the world. The story of Yamato's economy, then, is not a tale of numbers or markets, but of survival made sacred, of necessity transformed into culture. It is the story of how rice and fish, iron and trade, bound a people together and set them upon the path of history. Without the sea and the grain, there would be no Yamato, no Japan. With them, an island of tribes became a nation of destiny. Every civilization has its gods, and every people their sacred landscape. For Yamato, the land itself was holy. Mountains that pierced the clouds, rivers that glistened like silver veins, forests that whispered with unseen voices. This was Shinto, the way of the gods, a faith not written in scripture, but breathed into the soil, the wind, the stones. It saw the world alive with kami, spirits dwelling in every cascade of water, every gnarled pine, every shimmer of sunlight through bamboo leaves. To the early Japanese, there was no division between natural and supernatural. The sacred was simply the everyday world, seen with reverence. Shrines rose not as monuments of stone, but as humble wooden dwellings, blending into their surroundings as though the gods themselves disliked excess. At Ise, the most sacred shrine to Amaterasu, the sun goddess, wood is ritually renewed every 20 years, a cycle of death and rebirth mirroring the eternal flow of nature. For centuries, pilgrims have walked forested paths to kneel before its unadorned sanctuaries, as though simplicity were itself divine. Yet Yamato was never a closed garden. Across the sea, China's vast empire shone like a lantern, and its light cast long shadows over Japan. From the 6th century, emissaries and monks carried with them not only silk and writing, but also philosophies and faiths. Among them came Buddhism, a religion of profound subtlety, speaking of suffering, impermanence, and the path to enlightenment. Its temples, with bronze statues and vast halls, stood in contrast to Shinto's wooden shrines, as if another world had stepped ashore. At first, Shinto and Buddhism seemed like rivals. One worshipped nature's immediacy, the other sought liberation from earthly cycles. But Japan is a land of synthesis, not exclusion. Instead of choosing, the Yamato people wove them together. The kami were seen as protectors of the Buddha's law. The Buddha himself was reimagined as a distant manifestation of the kami. The native reverence for mountains found new expression in Buddhist monasteries perched on misty peaks. The drum of Shinto ritual merged with the chant of sutras. This fusion created not confusion, but richness. Where Shinto gave intimacy with the land, Buddhism gave depth of philosophy. One sanctified life as it was, the other explained life as it might become. Together, they created a soul both tender and resilient, a culture that found beauty in the transient cherry blossom and meaning in the patient stone of temple courtyards. Alongside Buddhism came Confucianism, carried from China as a system of ethics and governance. While Shinto shaped the spirit and Buddhism the imagination, Confucianism disciplined the social order, respect for hierarchy, loyalty to ruler, filial piety. In Yamato's early state, these teachings offered structure to power and legitimacy to authority. The emperor could now claim not only divine descent from Amaterasu, but also moral alignment with the way of heaven, echoing the Chinese mandate. Thus, religion and philosophy together became pillars of both throne and people. Even now, Japan bears witness to this layering of faiths. Walk through Nara and stand before the great Buddha of Todaiji, its bronze figure towering in serene majesty, a symbol of Buddhism's triumph in the ancient capital. Then journey to Ise, where the plain wooden beams of the Shinto shrine stand in quiet contrast, whispering of older, earthbound devotions. Between them lies the very heart of Yamato, a civilization that could bow to mountains and meditate on emptiness, pray to ancestors and ponder enlightenment, honor the emperor and respect the scholar. This coexistence of kami and Buddha gave Japan a spiritual flexibility that shaped its art, its politics, and its daily life. The curve of a temple roof echoed the slope of a sacred mountain. The rituals of rice planting blended prayers to kami with offerings to Buddhist guardians. Even the sword of a samurai, in later centuries, was blessed at a Shinto shrine and consecrated with Buddhist rites. Spirit and steel were never far apart. One senses this harmony even in modern Japan. In the bustle of Tokyo, a businessman might pause before a Shinto shrine at the corner of a neon-lit street, clapping his hands to summon the kami. Later, at a funeral, Buddhist monks chant sutras for the departed. To live Japanese is still to live within both worlds, as naturally as breathing in and out. Thus, the soul of Yamato was not singular, but dual, not rigid, but fluid. It was a dialogue between earth and heaven, between acceptance and aspiration. Shinto rooted the people to their islands, binding them to mountains and rivers. Buddhism lifted their eyes to universal truths, reminding them of impermanence and compassion. The fusion of the two did not dilute Yamato, it defined it. For civilizations rise not only on armies and harvests, but on the visions that guide their people. And Yamato's vision, born of Kami and Buddha, was that life itself is sacred, whether fleeting as a cherry blossom or enduring as bronze. It is this vision, more than any conquest or dynasty, that remains the true soul of Japan. Every civilization discovers, sooner or later, that survival demands not only farmers and priests, but warriors. In the Yamato age, as rice paddies spread and wealth concentrated in the hands of noble clans, so too did rivalry sharpen. Where one clan built irrigation canals, another seized them. Where one ruler claimed divine descent, another challenged it with steel. Out of this climate of contest and consolidation emerged a new figure in Japanese history: the warrior, the forerunner of the samurai. The early battlefields of Japan were neither vast plains nor grand stone fortresses, but valleys hemmed by mountains, fields lined with rivers, and forests thick with shadow. Here, warfare demanded mobility. Cavalry became decisive. A mounted warrior, bow in hand, could strike and vanish, dominating terrain where heavy infantry would falter. The bow was the weapon of prestige, its long asymmetrical curve designed to be drawn from horseback. Arrows darkened the skies before swords were ever crossed. Yet swords, forged of iron, grew in importance. Curved blades began to replace the straighter forms of earlier times, precursors to the katana that would later become legend. These warriors were not yet the disciplined samurai of later centuries, bound by strict codes and hereditary ranks. They were retainers, champions, tribal knights in the service of their lords. Loyalty was personal, tied to clan and kin, rather than to abstract ideals. But within this crucible of violence and allegiance, something greater was being born. The seeds of Bushido, the way of the warrior, were already germinating. Courage, loyalty, honor in death. These were not yet written doctrines, but instincts honed by necessity and ritualized in the songs of victory and mourning. The Yamato court, centered in Nara and later Heian, depended on these fighters both to defend its authority and to extend it. Campaigns against rival clans or against the Emishi tribes of the northeast hardened the warrior class. victories were celebrated not merely as conquests of land, but as affirmations of divine order. The emperor's command carried out by the sword arm of his vassals. In this way, the warrior became not just a soldier, but an instrument of cosmic justice, or so the chronicles proclaimed. As centuries passed, the reliance on warriors deepened. Court nobles, draped in silken robes, entrusted their estates to armed stewards who could protect them from bandits or ambitious rivals. These stewards, often provincial chieftains themselves, built networks of power through arms and loyalty. Thus, the foundation of the samurai class was laid, long before the word samurai became formalized. The warrior was no longer a temporary servant of war, but a permanent estate of society. One can almost see the shadow of this emergence in later depictions of Japan's warrior spirit. Though The Last Samurai is set centuries after Yamato's dawn, its imagery, the mounted archer galloping across misty fields, the warrior torn between service and conscience, echoes the beginnings of this class. Cinema gives us the mature samurai, disciplined by code and honor, but their silhouette is traced back to these tribal fighters who first gave Japan its military spine. Violence, however, was only one half of their story. The other was ritual. Battles were often preceded by displays of archery, duels of champions, or shouted challenges across the field. Warfare was not only about killing, but about proving valor. To die bravely was as important as to win. Such attitudes, hardened by time, would crystallize into the cult of honorable death that later defined Bushido. In Yamato's early centuries, one can already sense the transformation of war into theater, of combat into a moral stage. And so, within the Yamato state, the warrior was both necessary and dangerous. Necessary, because without his sword, the emperor's writ was empty. Dangerous, because power rested on the loyalty of men whose strength could as easily topple as protect. This paradox would haunt Japanese history for centuries, culminating in the rise of the shogunate. But in its earliest form, it was simply the tension of a society in transition, from tribal chieftains to imperial court, from clan champions to samurai lords. The dawn of the samurai was therefore not a single moment, but a slow unfolding. From mounted archers of the valleys, to retainers guarding noble estates, to warriors who began to see themselves as a distinct brotherhood. Their weapons gave them power, their loyalty gave them purpose, their ideals gave them immortality. Japan had found its sword arm, and in the reflection of that steel, it also began to glimpse the outlines of its soul. Every island people knows both the gift and the curse of the sea. It protects, yet it also tempts invaders to test their fortune upon its waves. For the Yamato state, long accustomed to borrowing knowledge from the continent, the sea was a bridge of culture, but it was also a wall of war. From the earliest centuries, Japan's rulers faced the delicate task of balancing exchange with defense. Korea and China sent envoys, monks, and craftsmen, but they also sent armies, or at least threats of armies, whenever Japan appeared weak. To be Japanese in the Yamato age was to live between admiration for the continent and fear of subjugation by it. The first encounters were less invasions than entanglements. Clans from the Japanese archipelago involved themselves in the struggles of the Korean peninsula, sending troops to support allies or seize influence. These early adventures taught bitter lessons. Armies bogged down, alliances faltered, victories turned to dust. From China, the great Tang dynasty projected both cultural brilliance and military intimidation. Envoys from Yamato paid tribute, accepting the unequal exchange of diplomacy. For in return they received not only security but the tools of civilization: writing, Buddhism, bureaucracy. Yet beneath the gifts was a persistent anxiety. Could the young island state withstand the might of Asia's continental empires? That question was answered in fire and wind when the Mongols came. In the 13th century, after sweeping across Eurasia with thunderous speed, the Mongol Empire turned its gaze toward Japan. The Khans had subdued China, crushed Korea, and now demanded submission from the island realm. The court in Kamakura refused. For the first time, Japan faced an existential threat not from petty clan rivalries, but from the greatest war machine the world had ever known. The invasions came in waves. In 1274, Mongol forces with Korean and Chinese auxiliaries crossed the strait in a fleet of hundreds of ships. The Japanese defenders, accustomed to ritualized duels and archery contests, were stunned by the Mongols' thunderous drums, explosive bombs, and massed infantry tactics. Villages burned, samurai fell, and the Yamato spirit was tested as never before. Yet resistance was fierce. Every village, every shrine seemed to rally fighters. As night fell, a storm rose from the sea, smashing much of the Mongol fleet against the rocks and scattering survivors into the waves. 7 years later, the Mongols returned with an even greater armada. By some accounts, over 4,000 ships and 100,000 men. The Japanese braced themselves for annihilation. Samurai fortifications lined the beaches. Defenders fought with a desperation born of knowing there was no retreat, only sea and death behind them. The struggle raged, and once again, nature intervened. A colossal typhoon swept through the straits, tearing apart the invaders' fleet. Thousands drowned, their ships shattered like toys upon the shore. The Japanese named this deliverance kamikaze, the divine wind. It was more than meteorology. It was providence, the gods themselves declaring that the islands were sacred and unconquerable. From that moment, the myth of Japan's inviolability became entwined with its national soul. Never again would the Japanese see themselves as mere tributaries or apprentices to continental power. They were heirs of Amaterasu, protected by the very storms of heaven. The Mongol invasions left deep scars, but also deep pride. They proved that even the mightiest empire could not bend the Yamato spirit. They gave Japan a new identity, not merely a receiver of culture, but a defender of its own destiny. Independence was no longer a fragile hope, but a principle sanctified by divine intervention. Modern echoes of this myth are everywhere. In World War II, the term kamikaze was tragically reborn as young pilots offered their lives in desperate defense of their homeland. But its roots were in Yamato's survival against Kublai Khan, when storm and sword combined to protect the islands. The word still stirs the imagination. It is not merely about destruction, but about an unyielding will to remain free. Even in the realm of games, this spirit lingers. In Age of Empires, the Yamato civilization is famed for its resilience, its cavalry swift and its villagers efficient, a reflection of a nation that could not be subdued despite overwhelming odds. Like their historical counterparts, the Yamato in the game embodies speed, adaptability, and the quiet ferocity of those who know that survival depends upon never yielding. The divine wind was more than a storm. It was a symbol, a turning point where the Japanese people, once apprentices of China and entangled in Korea, stood as a civilization in their own right. It gave them a story to tell themselves that the sea was not only a barrier, but a guardian, that the gods watched over their islands, and that their destiny was independence. If the storm winds of the Mongol invasions forged Japan's independence, then the Heian period had already forged its soul. From the 9th to the 12th century, the city of Heian-kyo, modern Kyoto, stood as the heart of a glittering world, where warriors were still shadows on the horizon, and poets, courtiers, and painters shaped the destiny of a civilization. In that age, power meant not only the ability to command armies, but the ability to command beauty, to turn life itself into a work of art. The Heian court was unlike any other in Asia. Modeled at first upon the Tang dynasty's capital of Chang'an, Kyoto soon developed its own voice, more subtle, more refined. Within its palaces, under painted screens and beneath the fragrance of incense, the aristocracy of Yamato invented what might be called the aesthetics of existence. To live well was not merely to wield wealth or rank, but to cultivate a sensitivity so delicate that the sound of falling blossoms or the shimmer of moonlight on a pond could move one to tears. At the center of this refined culture stood the Fujiwara clan, masters not so much of armies as of marriages. By placing their daughters in the imperial household, they ruled through emperors as regents and chancellors, their power veiled by ceremony, their dominance softened by ritual. Under their guidance, the court became less a government than a stage where rank was measured by the elegance of one's poetry, the grace of one's robes, the subtlety of one's correspondence. Politics and aesthetics fused into a single fabric of life. It was in this setting that the world's first great novel was born, The Tale of Genji, written by the noblewoman Murasaki Shikibu in the early 11th century. More than a love story, it was a mirror of Heian society itself. Its elegance, its melancholy, its obsession with fleeting beauty. In Genji's world, passion and poetry intertwine. Joy is always shadowed by the awareness of impermanence. The Japanese called this mood mono no aware. The pathos of things, the gentle sadness in recognizing that all beauty fades. It became the guiding principle of Japanese aesthetics. From the falling petals of cherry blossoms to the impermanent glow of a lantern at dusk. Beyond literature, the arts flourished in every form. Courtly music, gagaku, with its slow, haunting tones imported from China but refined into uniquely Japanese rhythms, filled the air of banquets and ceremonies. Calligraphy, borrowed from Chinese characters, became a test of both skill and spirit, as the brush's stroke revealed the inner harmony of its wielder. Clothing became an art of layering colors in subtle harmony with the seasons. A lady's robes might echo the plum blossoms of spring or the crimson of autumn leaves. Even correspondence became an aesthetic exercise. Poems exchanged on carefully folded paper, their ink mingled with perfumes so that the scent itself carried meaning. Yet beneath this shimmering world, shadows gathered. The Heian aristocracy, so obsessed with refinement, neglected the provinces, where rougher, hungrier men built their own power through land and sword, while courtiers in Kyoto debated the proper hue of a robe or the phrasing of a verse. Outside the capital, the samurai class began to rise. It was a paradox of history. The more perfect the Heian court became in its cultivation of beauty, the more fragile it grew in politics. Splendor was bought at the cost of strength. And yet, the legacy of Heian is not measured in the battles it failed to fight, but in the culture it created. Kyoto today still breathes with its spirit. The annual Aoi Matsuri, Hollyhock Festival, revives Heian pageantry, with processions of men and women dressed in layered robes, their elegance echoing the world of Murasaki. The Byodo-in Temple in Uji, with its Phoenix Hall shimmering over a lotus pond, stands as an architectural poem of that era's serenity. Even the streets of Nara and Kyoto, where lanterns glow in the twilight, seem to whisper of an age when every gesture aspired to grace. To the Japanese, the Heian period was both golden age and gentle warning. It proved that civilization can achieve a level of refinement where life itself becomes an art form, but also that beauty without balance breeds weakness. The Fujiwara courtiers, with their fragile power, could not hold back the tide of warriors that would soon transform Japan. Yet they left something more enduring than armies. A vision of life as elegance, of sorrow as beauty, of impermanence as the very essence of art. In the context of games like Age of Empires, one might say that the Heian civilization chose not to invest in barracks and stables, but in temples, theaters, and libraries. Their strength was not on the battlefield, but in the mind and spirit. And though such a choice may lead to conquest by others, it also ensures immortality of another kind. Cultural memory. Armies vanish. Poems remain. Thus the Heian court, with all its splendor and fragility, still shines across 1,000 years, not as a cautionary tale alone, but as a reminder that civilization is more than survival. It is the pursuit of beauty, even in the shadow of impermanence. The twilight of the Heian court gave birth to a new dawn, a harsher, red-streaked dawn lit by fire and steel. The aristocrats of Kyoto, lost in poems and perfumes, could not command the unruly provinces. Beyond their painted screens rose men hardened by land, by hunger, by war. These were the samurai, the servants, though they served not emperors or courtiers, but the inexorable laws of battle and loyalty. From their swords emerged a new Japan, one no longer ruled by verses of love, but by the clash of steel beneath a blood-red moon. Two great clans marked the beginning of this age, the Taira and the Minamoto. Like titans, they dominated the 12th century, their rivalry staining rivers with blood. The Taira, proud and radiant, basked in their wealth and control of the sea routes. The Minamoto, stern and relentless, bred warriors as disciplined as wolves. Their conflict culminated in the Genpei War, 1180–1185, a civil war that shattered the illusions of courtly supremacy. The clash ended at Dan no Ura, where the sea itself seemed to mourn. Child emperors drowned, noble banners sank, and the Minamoto emerged victorious. It was here that Japan's political axis shifted forever. No longer would emperors or Fujiwara regents rule. Instead, from the warlike Minamoto arose the first shogunate, a military government at Kamakura. The emperor remained in Kyoto, a figurehead draped in brocade, while real power rested in the calloused hands of generals. It was the birth of the Bakufu, literally tent government, for it was born in the war camp. From this point onward, Japan's history would be written not by courtiers, but by warriors. Yet the samurai were more than mere soldiers. They carried within them a code, nascent still, but destined to be called Bushido, the way of the warrior. Their discipline was forged not only by necessity, but by philosophy. Loyalty to Lord above self, honor above life, endurance above comfort. To retreat was shame, to surrender was unthinkable. Death was not the enemy, but the companion of every warrior. A horizon ever near, accepted with a quiet resolve. Armies of this era were unlike the vast, impersonal hordes of China or Mongolia. Japanese warfare was more intimate, almost ritualistic. Archers on horseback rode into battle seeking single combat, declaring their names and lineage before loosing arrows. Duels were not only contests of strength, but affirmations of identity, a way of proving one's worth before heaven and history. Over time, such customs gave way to harsher realities of organized armies. But the spirit of the duel, the reverence for personal valor, remained etched in the samurai's soul. The weapon that defined this age was not yet the katana of later legend, but the tachi, a longer, curved blade designed for cavalry strikes. Bows, too, remained sacred. A samurai was first an archer before he was a swordsman. Yet whatever the weapon, it was wielded with the same devotion, for the blade was seen not as a tool, but as a living spirit, a reflection of the warrior's own soul. Discipline made the samurai formidable. Battles could stretch for days across muddy fields or coastal shallows. Yet their endurance seemed inexhaustible. They were not the countless legions of Rome, nor the swift hordes of the steppes, but a smaller, iron-willed force, able to hold ground through loyalty and training. Like the Yamato civilization in Age of Empires, they seemed difficult to overwhelm, each fighter a fortress of resolve. In later centuries, films would try to capture this world. Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai offers one of the most vivid echoes, though set centuries after Kamakura's rise. Its weary yet noble warriors, gathered to defend a village, embody the eternal themes of sacrifice, loyalty, and the quiet pride of those who live by the sword. Though the film belongs to a later age, its spirit reflects the very genesis of the samurai. Men who found dignity not in luxury, but in service, and immortality not in peace, but in struggle. The rise of the samurai marked both loss and gain. Gone was the ethereal elegance of the Heian court, replaced by harsher virtues, loyalty, endurance, discipline. Yet through this shift, Japan secured the strength to endure. The shogunate stabilized the land, provided order, and prepared the nation for the storms that would come, from Mongol invasions to centuries of civil strife. If the Heian court gave Japan its heart, the samurai gave it a spine. To this day, the image of the warrior beneath a red moon, blade drawn, armor gleaming, endures as the defining icon of Japanese history. It was in this era that Japan ceased to be merely a land of poets and courtiers and became a land of warriors, where power was measured not in verses, but in victories. The blood of Minamoto and Taira still whispers in the waves of Dan no Ura, a reminder that civilizations rise not only on beauty, but on the blade. Every civilization has its warriors, but only a few have taught their warriors to sit still in silence. Japan, in its age of swords, also discovered the power of stillness. Amid the clangor of battle and the smoke of burning provinces, another current flowed quietly from China, carried by monks and pilgrims: Zen Buddhism. From it, the Japanese drew not only a religion, but an aesthetic, a philosophy, and in time, a national spirit. The warriors who had risen under the Minamoto and Kamakura shoguns found in Zen a mirror of their own discipline. Zen did not preach salvation in distant heavens, nor did it demand elaborate rituals. It taught instead the stark courage of the present moment, the breath, the instant, the silence before the strike. For the samurai, it was the perfect creed: to live as though death were always near, to act without hesitation, to find eternity in a single stroke of the sword or a single sip of tea. From this marriage of sword and silence arose an aesthetic unlike any other. The Japanese called it wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection, of the fleeting, of the simple and austere. A cracked tea bowl was more precious than a flawless one, because it bore the dignity of time and impermanence. A solitary pine on a bare hill was lovelier than a crowded garden, for it reflected the loneliness of human existence. Where Europe sought majesty in marble cathedrals, Japan found sublimity in empty spaces, in shadows, in the fragile petal that falls too soon. It was out of this spirit that the way of tea, chanoyu, was born. More than a drink, the tea ceremony became a meditation, a ritual of harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. A warrior might return from battle, blood still on his hands, to kneel in a hut no larger than a monk's cell, where a host in plain robes served bitter green tea with deliberate grace. In that silence, rank and violence melted away. The sword rested at the door. Within, all were equal in the shared act of stillness. Here, Zen gave the samurai not only discipline, but respite. Not only the art of dying, but the art of living. From tea flowed into poetry. The brief, piercing verses of haiku embodied the same spirit of economy and impermanence. In 3 short lines, a poet might capture an entire universe. A frog leaping into water, the sound echoing like eternity. Autumn leaves trembling, whispering of death and renewal. Just as the sword found meaning in a single strike, so the poet found meaning in a single image. The discipline of economy was the same, whether in steel or syllables. Even the way of the sword, kendo, absorbed Zen. To train with the blade was not only to master technique, but to master the self. Cut down the enemy within, Zen masters told their warrior disciples. Victory was not over another man, but over one's own fear, anger, hesitation. The perfect swordsman was not the strongest, but the calmest, the one who struck without desire, without ego, like lightning in a clear sky. This Zen-infused culture of restraint, silence, and impermanence became the very foundation of Japan's national identity. It allowed a land torn by civil wars to cultivate serenity in its gardens, elegance in its calligraphy, eternity in its poetry. It made endurance not only a necessity, but a virtue. When later generations faced storms, whether Mongol invasions, natural disasters, or foreign wars, it was this inner discipline, this spiritual poise, that sustained them. Even today, the legacy lingers. Tourists in Kyoto sit cross-legged in wooden temples, the scent of incense rising, the autumn light falling through latticed windows. They may not know the words wabi or sabi, but they feel the stillness, the quiet dignity, the sense that beauty lies not in perfection, but in the fleeting moment. To sip matcha in a humble tea house, to gaze at a rock garden raked into rippling silence, to bow before a simple scroll. These are not relics of the past, but living practices. They remind us that power is incomplete without peace, and that civilizations endure not only by the sword, but by the spirit. Thus, Japan, forged in the furnace of war, also became a garden of silence. Its genius was not to choose between beauty and strength, but to weave them together. The samurai, who had learned to die without fear, also learned to live with grace. And from this paradox was born one of the most unique cultures in the history of civilization. A nation where the clash of steel was balanced by the whisper of bamboo, where eternity was glimpsed in a cup of tea, and where the soul of a people found its voice in silence. No civilization is built by emperors alone. Behind the polished armor of the samurai and the refined ceremonies of Kyoto's nobility stood a quieter multitude. The peasants bent over rice fields, the artisans hammering in small workshops, the merchants haggling in crowded markets. The story of Yamato, like that of every nation, was carried not only in palaces and battlefields, but also in the mud of the paddies and the songs of the village. From the earliest centuries, Japanese society took on a clear order. At the top stood the imperial family and the noble houses, Fujiwara in Heian, Minamoto and Taira in Kamakura, who claimed the mandate of rule. Beneath them emerged the warriors, hardened by endless conflict, bound by codes of loyalty and steel. Below these guardians of order lived the true lifeblood of the land: the farmers, the artisans, and at the very bottom in status, if not in influence, the merchants. It was the peasants who bore the heaviest burden, yet also the deepest pride. In a land where mountains hemmed in the plains, every square of fertile soil was precious. To coax rice from the earth was not merely agriculture, but devotion, a collaboration with the gods. Shinto shrines rose beside the paddies, and festivals marked each stage of planting and harvest. The farmer's year was as much a liturgy as a labor. The rice plant itself was sacred, symbol of life and renewal. Even emperors performed ritual rice planting, reminding rulers that they too were sustained by the sweat of the humble. These peasants, taxed heavily by lords and threatened by the wars of the warrior class, nevertheless formed the foundation of Japan's civilization. Without their rice, no noble could feast, no samurai could march to battle. Dynasties rose and fell, but the rhythm of planting and harvesting endured. When armies clashed, the field still had to be tilled. When shoguns decreed, the earth still demanded seed and water. In this constancy lay the resilience of Japan. Beside the farmers stood the artisans: carpenters, potters, weavers, swordsmiths. In their hands, the beauty and utility of Japanese culture took form. A village carpenter built not only houses, but shrines. His work framed the ceremonies of life and death. The swordsmith, with fire and hammer, gave the samurai his soul in steel. The potter, with clay and flame, created bowls whose imperfect curves became emblems of Zen. It was the artisans who carried forward the subtle genius of Japanese design, the blend of elegance and restraint that still astonishes the world. The merchants, though officially despised as profit-seekers in a society that honored warriors and peasants, played an indispensable role. They ferried salt and silk, fish and iron, sake and rice between provinces. In markets along riverbanks and castle towns, they wove together the strands of Japan's scattered regions into a web of trade. With every coin exchanged, they quietly eroded the rigid hierarchy. Wealth began to speak where bloodlines had ruled. In later centuries, these merchants would rise to unprecedented influence. But even in the Yamato age, they planted the seeds of a new balance of power. Yet beyond these social roles, it was the life of the people, their folk culture, that gave Japan its enduring humanity. In the evenings after labor, villages echoed with songs, drums, and dances. Stories of gods and heroes passed from lips to lips, embroidered with exaggeration, colored by laughter. Puppeteers and wandering monks carried tales from province to province, spreading both entertainment and moral lessons. Where the court composed refined poetry in Chinese characters, the people composed folk songs and chants, simple in form but rich in feeling, testifying to joy, sorrow, and endurance. Festivals, matsuri, bound the community together. They were more than amusement. They were rituals that sanctified the cycle of the year, honoring the kami in gratitude and hope. Lanterns lit up summer nights, drums thundered through mountain valleys, dancers swirled in circles as if echoing the turning of the seasons. Many of these matsuri have endured unchanged for 1,000 years, so that a modern traveler walking through Kyoto or Nara may glimpse the same colors, the same masks, the same dances that once delighted a farmer of the Yamato Plain. In these moments, past and present dissolve. The spirit of a people continues its unbroken song. Thus, the history of Japan was not only the chronicle of shoguns and emperors, but also of those who sowed the rice, hammered the steel, painted the fans, and carried goods along the dusty roads. Civilization, as Will Durant once wrote, is not in the palace alone, but in the marketplace, the workshop, the festival. The Yamato people, in their layered society, prove this truth, that while power may rest with the few, culture belongs to the many. In their sweat and laughter, their songs and rituals, they built the foundations of a civilization that could endure the storms of invasion and civil war. For even when castles fell and dynasties crumbled, the peasants still planted, the artisans still shaped, the merchants still bartered, the village still danced. And so Japan lived on, carried not only by the sword, but by the hands of its common people. Civilizations, like men, are born, mature, and decline, yet their spirit often outlives their political forms. The Yamato civilization, which first stitched together the islands of Japan into a cultural whole, it did not vanish with the passing of emperors or the fall of shogunates. Its essence, refined through centuries, pulses still in the veins of modern Japan. To walk the neon-lit streets of Tokyo or to sit beneath cherry blossoms in Kyoto is to feel both the freshness of today and the shadow of antiquity. At the heart of this continuity lies the figure of the emperor. The institution of the Tenno, first proclaimed in the Yamato age, survives as the oldest hereditary monarchy in the world. Though the emperor today reigns without ruling, his presence embodies the unbroken thread of national identity. His ceremonies, rooted in Shinto ritual, recall the earliest myths of descent from the sun goddess Amaterasu. When Japanese citizens watch the emperor plant rice in spring, they witness not a quaint tradition, but the living survival of Yamato's ancient bond between ruler, land, and people. Shinto, too, remains a foundation of Japanese life. Its reverence for nature, its quiet worship of the kami in trees, rocks, and rivers, continues to shape the Japanese soul. In an age of skyscrapers and bullet trains, shrines still stand at the corners of busy districts. Businessmen bow before them as once peasants did in their villages. Shinto did not fade with Buddhism's arrival, nor with the rise of modern science. It adapted as Yamato itself once adapted foreign influences into a native harmony. It whispers the same truth that animated early Japan, that divinity dwells not far away, but in the world that surrounds us. Equally enduring is the samurai spirit, the discipline, honor, and stoic endurance that Yamato bequeathed to the warrior class. Though the sword has long been set aside, its ethic survives in unexpected places. In the courtesy of daily life, in the perfectionism of craft, in the relentless pursuit of mastery. The same patience that once polished blades into works of art now shapes the production of cars, electronics, and animated films. Even in sports, the bowing judoka or the tireless baseball player carries the unspoken code of Bushido. The world admires Japanese efficiency and dedication without always realizing that beneath it lies the ghost of the samurai. In this sense, Yamato stands alongside Babylon, Greece, and Rome as a civilization whose identity transcends the centuries. Babylon gave mankind its mathematics and law, Greece its philosophy and democracy, Rome its empire and legal order. Yamato, less expansive yet equally enduring, gave Japan a cultural unity and spiritual vision that time could not erode. While Babylon crumbled to dust, while Athens and Sparta became ruins, Yamato became Japan, a civilization that managed, through adaptation and resilience, to turn survival into triumph. Modern culture itself often returns to these origins, consciously or not. Japanese cinema and anime, the global ambassadors of Japan's imagination, draw deeply from Yamato roots. Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai distilled the warrior code into universal drama. as stirring to audiences in Paris or Hollywood as to peasants of medieval Japan. Hayao Miyazaki's Princess Mononoke reaches even further back, into the animist heart of Shinto, where forests and gods wage battles unseen by modern eyes. These works remind the world that Japan's art, however modern in form, is ancient in soul. Thus, Yamato's story is not merely one of rise and fall, but of persistence. Other civilizations left monuments and philosophies. Yamato left a living tradition. Its rice fields still shimmer under the summer sun. Its shrines still echo with the clapping of hands. Its emperors still trace the ritual of their forebears. And its people, whether forging steel in the 13th century or designing microchips in the 21st, still embody the same mixture of discipline, reverence, and artistry that defined their ancestors. What, then, is the meaning of Yamato's legacy? It is the paradox of a nation that has known both change and constancy. The Yamato clans unified the archipelago. Shoguns and samurai reshaped it. Merchants and industrialists modernized it. Yet, through all this transformation, the essence remained. Japan today is an economic giant, a technological innovator, a cultural exporter of films, cuisine, and fashion. But beneath the modern visage lies the old Yamato heart. Reverence for tradition, harmony with nature, and a belief that life, however fleeting, must be lived with honor and beauty. In the end, civilizations endure not by conquest, but by spirit. The Yamato did not conquer vast territories like Rome, nor spread philosophy like Greece. It conquered time by remaining true to itself. In its temples and poems, its gardens and festivals, its swords and stories, Japan remembers what Yamato first taught: that a people, however small their land or fragile their beginning, may carve out eternity if they live with balance, courage, and faith in their gods. And so the Yamato civilization, born in the mists of antiquity, survives in the neon of Shinjuku, the quiet of Kyoto's temples, the laughter of children at summer matsuri, and the visions of animators who turn ancient myths into global dreams. It reminds us that while empires may rise and fall, the soul of a nation, once awakened, need never die. Thus, our journey through the Yamato civilization has taken us from the ancient Kofun tombs, through the glory of the imperial court, to the rise of the samurai and the quiet strength of Zen. Yamato is not just history. It still lives on in every festival, every haiku, and even in the films and anime of modern Japan. If this series has opened a new perspective on the roots of Japan, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next adventures into other great civilizations. From Greece and Babylon to the Inca and the Vikings. And now, we'd love to hear from you. In your opinion, which Yamato legacy has left the deepest mark on Japan today? The samurai spirit, Shinto, or Zen aesthetics? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice could spark the next great discussion in our community.